Welcome to the Enterprise Fleet Summit. Today, we are joined by Dr. Mark Manera, founder and CEO of Supply Chain Fitness. Welcome to the summit, Mark.
Yeah, Mary, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for it.
I am very excited about this as a fangirl that has followed you on social media for a minute. I'm pretty excited to be able to talk to you today. But before we dive into that, let's get some background on you and kind of what drove you to start Supply Chain Fitness.
Yeah, so a little over 3 years ago, I did not know anyone in the trucking transportation world. My background is I'm a doctor of physical therapy, and I was working in a PT clinic south of St. Louis in this really small town, and a bunch of truck drivers walked into the door, and I got to know a couple of them, really well, and, honestly saw firsthand what 20, 30 years behind the wheel can do to someone's health, and that threw me down this rabbit hole of the trucking industry. And, long story short, what I ended up seeing after digging into it for hours and hours and hours just completely changed the course of my career. And, I saw, truck drivers have a life expectancy 16 years less than the average population. The amount of chronic diseases when it comes to diabetes or obesity, heart disease, high blood pressure was really scary. And when I looked deeper and deeper into it, no one was really coming in and building specifically around this unique lifestyle that anyone in the transportation supply chain world does, but specifically, drivers, where they are the cornerstone and the people that really need the most help, specifically with the sedentary lifestyle and some of the really hard nutritional decisions that they have to make at different truck stops or fast food restaurants. And that's kind of where I was like, hey, I can fill this gap. And I threw myself in. And for the last 3 years, I've been building Supply Chain Fitness. And we're a corporate health, corporate wellness program where we partner with trucking and insurance companies within the supply chain to, help their employees live a healthier, happier life.
I absolutely love that. That is something that, myself on a road trip, I've wondered the exact same thing of like, after like 12 hours of driving, you're like, man, I just want like a salad. I just want something that's like very nutrient dense versus, yet another cheeseburger or yet another chicken sandwich to go. But at the same time, those are the only options that are maybe open. So you don't even think about some of those swaps or some of the things that you can get that actually are better for you at some of those convenience locations.
Yeah, I mean, and I think I always tell drivers, it's always about picking the healthiest option in the wherever you're at. There's always a healthier or healthiest option, if it's McDonald's or if it's Love's or TA, wherever you're at. And I asked all the members of the drivers, you're not trying to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? I've only had one driver who have told me they're trying to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, but for the majority of people, including myself, who's just trying to be healthier, who's not trying to, go to a DOT physical and be scared that they're going to lose their whole career because they can't pass it. Mm-hmm. There's so many small changes that do not change the day-to-day life that you live out on the road that you can make huge, outcome changes to your health if you do it on a consistent basis. And that's where we're really focused on, is really meeting each driver where they're at, looking at these highest leverage activities that they can fit in their day-to-day life anywhere at any time out on the road, and help them build a healthier habits and a healthier lifestyle over time that they can sustain for the rest of their life. Because that's the goal of health. It's not like this 30-day sprint where you get to the end and you're done and you fall back. It's really the game of health is how can you figure out how you can build a life around it and do it for the rest of your life, because that's where you really see the outcomes from an individual day-to-day and an individual person, but also from an enterprise level, perspective on providing this to your employees. That's how your employees actually cut down risk. You see an ROI, you see, healthcare costs going down, you see less medically, turnovers due to medical reasons. And that's really where a lot of the return comes from.
I like that. No juice cleanse is going to take care of everything. You just have to take like successful changes consistently. I guess when it comes down to like talking to these drivers and, starting to have these conversations, kind of where do you start, especially because one of the first things you're going to hear is, well, it's hard to get nutrient dense food at a truck stop. The options are limited. I'm limited to like just what might be available. And, maybe there's not a supply truck that comes to the middle of nowhere, USA that often. So kind of how do you start having those conversations with people?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is really meeting each person where they're at and building an actual relationship and telling and showing them that, hey, we care about you as a human, and it's not here's this plan that you need to follow and it's a cookie cutter that we're handing every single driver, but it's an actual personalized thing that we get to know, their daily schedule. How often are you home? What time of the day are you driving? Are you OTR? Are you regional? Are you home every couple of days? Or are you out? Or you live in your truck full time? And based off of all of that, and then kind of their past history and where they're at today with their health, I think that really narrows down looking at and finding some of these lowest hanging fruits where we can find that starting point. Because again, we're not building of something unrealistic that they are holding on for dear life and falling back to square one after a week. It's all about, building up these small wins and figuring out, the combination of what's this lowest hanging fruit that they can do wherever they're at in their current day-to-day routine. What are they motivated to do and what are they excited about doing? And also, what is going to make the biggest impact on towards their goals and from their starting position. And we kind of mesh all three of those combine and personalize it to them because, the most important part is to get them in the habit, in the routine of starting on day one and just continuing to build those wins day after day. And once you get the tires turning, the truck is hard to stop, right? But it's also hard to start, right? And so we have to start small and we can't try to go from 0 to 60 in, a week. We have to sometimes, there you go, I'm throwing all these trucking references out there. They're just coming from my head. I don't even know. I am making half of this up on the references side of things. But you know what I'm trying to say here, where it's really important to figure out something that's personalized to each member and not just hand, your whole fleet of 500 people the same program and expect it to work perfectly for them, because that's just not realistic. And it's not worth your time if you do that, because you're not going to have high engagement rates, or you're not going to see the outcomes that, your company and your bottom line really want to see.
I absolutely love that, especially when you say you meet people where they're at, because some people, it could just be simple. The change that they'll be willing to make at the first is maybe swap some soda for water or something else. And other people, they still want to drink a bunch of soda, but they have no problem taking a 30-minute walk while they get loaded or unloaded, like just around the facility. I absolutely love that, because you are right. It's different for everyone. Just like even outside of driving, everyone has their own health and fitness goals. Like, I just like to not have to buy new pants. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
So I guess when it comes to the employer side, how, like from the employer, they want to help support their drivers in their journeys. They want to help be supportive. They want to do the thing and make sure their drivers are getting healthy. What is kind of that? What is the most effective way an employer can support? And also, like, what are some of those quick wins that maybe are the easiest to implement?
Yeah, I think the first thing that I always ask, when I'm speaking at different trucking conferences or when I'm just talking to a company in general who's interested in doing something about, their driver's health, is to kind of ask two questions. Number one being, does your team internally have the capacity to consistently, implement a program and, do something on a day-to-day basis, just like, you January 1st to January 7th, just doing that, it's just like that juice cleanse, right? You're not actually going to see really any impact. Health is a year-round thing. And so I think a real question you need to ask is, does your HR team, does your benefits team, does your safety team have the capacity to consistently handle a health and fitness, health and wellness program? And if the answer is yes, awesome. We check that box. If the answer is no, then we'll get to that in a second. But the second question being, does your company have someone internally who has the expertise to really build this out, and the expertise both in the health and wellness side of things, but also the understanding of the trucking industry and truck drivers? And I think that mixture and that balance is really important, because you mentioned the juice cleanse, you mentioned, you stay up too late, 2 o'clock in the morning, you see commercials of all over the place health wise. And I think when you're talking about drivers in general, it's really important for them to focus on the meat and potatoes and get the real evidence-based approaches and habits that they can fit into their day-to-day life that are actually going to push the needle. And I think it's really important that you partner up or you find that right person who has the expertise to come in and lead that program, because if you don't, it might be worse than not doing anything at all, right? Because it can really turn some people's noses, and people just are weird about some health things. And so I think it's really important to find that right person. And if the answer to both of those, the capacity and expertise, is yes, then I think it's awesome. You start building something out and you kind of take it a very similar approach as you do safety, where it's a year-round conversation. It's a part of your culture. I think if the answer to either of those is no, then I don't think that's, oh, all right, we tried. I guess we can't do anything about your health. But I think it's really important for you to find a vendor or a partner who can come in and take a lot of the day-to-day stress and bring and partner with that expertise to run the program for you and your employees.
I absolutely love that, because just like you would, as like, just like shippers, they source out to 3PLs or, anything like that to get something done, you can rely on those vendor partners and really rely on that partnership to kind of benefit everyone the most and ultimately create a healthier, happier workforce. Because it's more than just, being physically healthy. Part of it comes into your mental health and everything like that. And I mean, driving, if you're an OTR driver, you're alone a lot of the time. And that gets very mentally exhausting and draining,
You're spot on. I mean, the mental health and the physical health go hand in hand. And what I always say is, if one falls off, the other one is oftentimes close following behind. And, I think something that I think when you look at it really quickly at trucking, it's like everyone thinks about just sedentary lifestyle. They're sitting behind the wheel. But when you really dive deep, you have conversations with drivers. The bigger aspect is what you just said, is the mentally drained. You're on for 11 hours a day of, crazy cars cutting you off, trying to figure out directions, making sure you're going the right way, dealing at the shippers and receivers. And I think that is oftentimes the biggest barrier and why we break the starting point up so small, because they need to mentally be able to realize they can do it. And if they try to bite too much off on day one, then it's unrealistic for them to consistently do it after, 5 days, 6 days of consistently driving long hours and being out on the road. And so I completely agree.
Yeah, it's one of those where you got to start small, because you might have goals that are 10 miles down the street, but if you're 6 days in and suddenly you feel very overwhelmed, you're just going to backslide and then be discouraged to start again, and nobody wants that.
Yeah, and I think the other aspect is, day 2, day 3, you're not going to lose 20 pounds, right? You're not going to weigh on the scale and you're like, whoa, where'd all this go, right? But I think there are a lot of like mental aspects and like from an energy perspective that you can see very quickly. And I'll give an example of a driver that we were talking to. His thing was he loved Pepsi, and he was drinking like 6 Pepsis a day while driving on the road. I mean, it just like adds up. I mean, the calories, and you have to add way too many zeros when you're looking at the total sugar that he was consuming on a daily basis. But all we did was we switched, we called it a week of 0 calorie beverage tasting or whatever. And we tried a bunch of different things, and he found that he really liked Pepsi Zero, right? And, is it the best option compared to just water? No, but it's a much better option than drinking, thousands of calories and hundreds of grams of sugar. And so all we did was switch him over to Pepsi Zero. That was our starting point. And he texted me back 2 days later, and he's like, I have so much energy. I don't have to take my old man naps anymore in the afternoon. And it's just from that one change. And so I think so many people have this expectation that, if they're going to make a change, or if their drivers are going to make a change, nothing's going to happen unless they completely flip their life 180 degrees over. And from my experience and just my expertise on the back end of health and fitness, could not be more wrong. I think taking smaller chunks and focusing on small behavior changes is really where all the magic is, and from a consistency perspective as well.
I mean, you're going to have that even in other aspects of your life. Those small changes that just make you be more consistent, it's going to only make you be successful, whether it's your health and wellness or, out there looking for freight. It's all about that consistency. We are almost out of time today, but if someone wants to reach out to you about maybe some swaps for their organization or, any other pro tips you have, where can they find you outside of the summit?
Yeah, look me up, supplychainfitness.com. You can look up Supply Chain Fitness on any social media, or if you're on LinkedIn, find me at Dr. Mark Manera. And my DMs are open, message me around, and I'm more than happy to help or find a way to partner with your company.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mark.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.